The focus today is going to be what you, as a tenant especially, need to do when you first take on a new tenancy and you have the opportunity to do the pre-move-in inspection. So the pre-move-in inspection is done when the unit is basically in its best condition. It's before you, the tenant, move in. Now, why would the landlord want to incentivize the tenant to do this inspection? The reason is the landlord benefits when the tenant does this pre-move-in inspection because the tenant can mark all the existing dirt and damage. And it's presumed that anything the tenant didn't mark at that time is going to be the fault of the tenant if it turns out it's dirty or damaged, outstanding of normal wear and tear. So, if you're a tenant, it is your best interest, and this is one of the few instances where the interests of the tenant and the landlord are aligned quite well. The tenant, it's in your best interest to do this pre-move-in inspection. Now, the landlord should have this pre-move-in inspection form, and this will go typically room by room, and within each room, you'll have the furniture, and it allows the tenant to mark any existing damage to the furniture, to the walls, or dirt to the carpet, to the blinds. Now, even though a landlord might say, oh, don't worry, that's not something I'm going to charge you for, or, oh, that's just going to be wear and tear, don't worry about it. There's no harm in marking that on this sheet, and it's quite risky if you don't. So the benefit of marking everything as a tenant, all the pre-existing damage you can find, all the pre-existing dirt you can find, easily outweighs any downsides to doing that. If you think you're going to get off on a rocky start with a landlord because you've done this, well then it's an obvious and immediate tell as to what kind of relationship you're probably about to have with that landlord. If he's difficult now, do you think that's going to change? Is it going to be easier once you moved in? Probably not. So what I want you to understand as a tenant is this is like when you rent a car. Now, just because you don't go around the car and mark all the existing damage doesn't mean that's a good thing. That just means you're also making another mistake. If you rent a car, it's in your best interest to use that sheet that you usually ignore as the car renter and mark all of that existing damage. Even take your phone and walk around the car and on the inside and get a shot of the mileage so you can see exactly this is before you put even a single mile on it. So hopefully that principle, that analogy, helps you better understand why this is important in the tenancy context. So yes, you want to mark everything on the landlord's sheet, and you want to make sure you take a photo of that sheet once you filled it in, even before that landlord gives you a copy of it, which the landlord should. It should be a copy of the file. But if you've marked any existing damage as a tenant, you really want to protect yourself by keeping a copy of all the damage you recorded. And at that time, maybe ask the landlord, hey, is there any problem with me just recording just a quick walkthrough? And this is, again, the easiest time for you to walk away. Maybe the landlord has your security deposit. Hopefully this is even before them. And if you realize that, hey, this landlord is being a little uncomfortable and he's not allowing me to fully document all the pre-existing damage, he's downplaying it, maybe you need to look for another place to live. If it's that early in your relationship and you're already getting a bad vibe, that's a red flag that you could ignore, but probably should not. So, to recap, pre-move-in inspection. You're going to get a form as a tenant. If you don't, you should ask for one. And if you don't get one, then maybe walk away. On that form, you can go with the landlord room by room and mark all the existing damage that you find. The more you mark as a tenant, the more you are protected. And here's why, in case it's not obvious. If you don't mark any pre-existing damage or dirt, when it comes time to move out, say 12 months from now, 10 years from now, the landlord will assume that since you didn't mark any pre-existing damage, everything was in perfect condition. Therefore, all of the new damages are your fault. So let's move on to the next. the pre-move out inspection. This is also called the initial inspection. I know it's confusing because we just talked about the pre-move-in inspection, but the initial inspection generally happens 2 weeks and no earlier than 2 weeks prior to the tenant's move out. And what this entails is that you might have that exact same sheet that has another column in it. So maybe that same sheet has all the pre-existing damages that you wrote down when you did that pre-move inspection. Now you have it again. And now you and the landlord are going to walk through the unit. And the landlord primarily, now it's up to the landlord who is going to have much more of an incentive to mark all the damages that the landlord can find. Now, since this is 2 weeks before the move out, you have roughly 2 weeks as a tenant to fix anything that the landlord allows you to fix. So if there's some significant structural damage that you, the tenant, have caused, the landlord's probably not going to allow you to fix that. Probably not even going to allow you to hire a contractor. But if it's superficial damage, if it's carpets that need to be cleaned or shampooed, make sure that you can use the shampoo company of your choice. Make sure that any damage that the landlord has brought to your attention is something that the landlord allows you to fix. And then once you've gone ahead and fixed that, you should document it. You should take pictures and video of how good the repair has been made in case this goes to court or small claims. And then the landlord will do the final inspection. And it's at that time where anything that wasn't fixed or couldn't be fixed can come out of your security deposit. But the landlord has to do the itemized deductions, has to save receipts for any expenses, and there could be new damage that arose after the initial inspection. In other words, that second inspection, that one in the middle, where you walked through with the landlord, he gave you notice of all the pre-existing damage that if you don't fix, he's going to rightfully deduct from your security deposit. But what happens if during those 2 weeks you bump a table into the wall? It wasn't on that initial inspection sheet. Can the landlord still deduct it? Yes. Even during the move out, when you as a tenant are physically moving out of the unit and you damage something on the way out, the landlord still has the right to go through your unit after you're fully vacated and take a look at any damage that arose anew, as well as any damage that the landlord couldn't see because, let's say, you had a table or a carpet or something blocking the landlord's ability to notice that there was damage or dirt. So to recap, when you are moving into a new unit, you want to take all the time you need, all the time the landlord will give you to do the walkthrough inspection before you've moved in. The pre-move-in inspection is where you're going to mark everything, whether you think it's significant or material or not. Put the most in your favor. Protect yourself by marking as much as you can. It'll benefit you because the less that you're aware of that you mark as pre-existing damage, the more damage and the greater the likelihood that damage will be used against you in terms of deducting from your security deposit. The security deposit is not the landlord's money. The landlord is just holding on to it. It's your money. You should want and be entitled to all of it back, minus any damage that the landlord is entitled to fix. So during that second inspection, the initial inspection, make sure that you are walking with the landlord. If the landlord tries to say, hey, this is new damage, and you know on that worksheet, the same one you're looking at, oh look, this is already marked as pre-existing. This is when I moved in. Hopefully the landlord will say, oh, okay, I didn't see that. Hopefully they won't argue with you. And again, this lesson applies to when you rent any piece of equipment. Even if you go into a VRBO, it might behoove you to walk through with a video camera, show your GPS watch or your time on your watch so it's obvious that you didn't change the time. This is when you first moved in. Nothing is out of place yet. And here's some previous damage. It's an easy thing to do with your cell phone. Just walk through and then upload it to the cloud and just save it. Hopefully you won't need it, but it's there if you do. And when you need it, you're going to be so glad that you have it. If you don't want to do a video, just photos of everything and put it into like a Google Photos album or an iCloud album. So you can easily keep it separate from all your thousands of other pictures. You can easily access it. And hopefully it'll stop a problem before it even becomes one. When the landlord says, oh, these marks weren't there when you moved in. Oh, really? Well, how did I take this picture a year ago then? Be respectful, but be firm yet fair. And if you find these tips helpful and you'd like more, I am a landlord's attorney. I also will help clients who are tenants on occasion. But if you are a California residential landlord and you need help with unlawful retainers, with settling disputes with your tenants, with the full suite of lease and rental agreements, as well as California statutory requirement addenda, compliance with AB 1482, if you still have clients or tenants who claimed COVID-19 financial hardship during SB 91 or AB 3088 or AB 832, let's talk. My name is Nick. I'm the landlord's attorney based here in San Diego, and I hope you never need these tips, but if you do, I hope you find them helpful. Thank you.